Hi, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Market Force Essentials. I'm here with our founder, Travis Carson. Hi, Travis.
Hi,
My
everybody. Hi, Karen.
and I'm the head of Guru Development with Market Force. We're here to share conversations with you about what we're noticing for ourselves to be important from our tool set, what we're noticing with clients, and just really get the material we practice with on an everyday basis out to the world as much as possible, because there's never been a better time to be sharing what we know. So on that note, Travis, can you tell me a little bit about, over the last week, what are you finding to be essential in your conversations with clients and for your work right now?
Yeah, a number of conversations recently with clients, both actually in a training context and in a coaching context, just around the importance of managing our time in a period like this. I think for a lot of us, it's so unique. We're not in our offices. We're trying to figure out workstations at home. I think a lot of people are working actually more hours than they do at the office, because it's kind of like you get up and then you just start working, and there's kind of like no distinction for start and end. And so been really working with people, like with a lot of our tools, to just create awareness around time and how it works and what's the importance of it, how you invest it properly for the business and everything that you're trying to build in your career, and just make sure people are putting some energy into it so that it doesn't just kind of get away from them, and or that they default, as we've talked about in some of the other videos, default just to more short-term projects and activities, which is usually the default when pressure goes up.
Nice. Okay, so it's sounding like the concept of paying attention to our time becomes really important, because I just want to make sure we're connecting with you on the why we find it so important. And I guess in the absence of awareness, we just spend our time wherever without intention. Or what would you say about why is it important, Travis?
Yeah, I think that's right. I think people, most things for most of us are done without intention or purpose. And it leads to a very reactionary situation. Like, I know it's the same for you, Karen, but I don't ever have any clients that call me up and go, hey, I've got extra time. What do I do with it now? Right? Like, all we ever work with are very ambitious people who don't have a lot of time. And yet, in order to really maximize, even in a normal business situation, in order to maximize, you have to use your time as a leading indicator, if that makes sense. Like a lagging indicator, like a profit and loss statement, is showing you a snapshot of all the work that you've done and how it's turned out. But once you're looking at the P&L, there's no way to really make changes to it, because it's showing you kind of the result of how you've invested your time. So we want people to be more conscious on the front end, how doing little things, and I'll show you in a second here, like actually calendaring in different colors, making some awareness around where their time is being invested, so that they can see it as a leading indicator. Oh, if I invest my time here, here's maybe the result I'm going to get out of my business. And so they get a chance to kind of be mindful at the beginning, not having to look at things in retrospect.
Okay, very cool. So it sounds like you have something awesome to show us to help us understand how to put this into action. So I love this part. Go for it, Travis.
Sure. So, yep, again, we're Mr. and Mrs. Framework, but frameworks are, I think, useful. They do a couple of things. They simplify things that are complicated. They make it easy to learn, easy to use, easy to share. They're not supposed to be something that is belief. They're supposed to just express, kind of like a map expresses the mountain, doesn't invent the mountain. And so no rocket science here, but the way that we try to look at it is that shorter term activities, we call income activities. If you're looking at the left side of the screen, we bifurcate income activities between green activities, which we would characterize as short run activities that lead to revenue generation for your own business, for the company, whatever it is. Red are also short-term activities that we characterize as administrative, meaning what? Meaning that they're non-revenue generating. Super foundational, super important, not discounting their importance, but just bifurcating between those two, that those are kind of the work in your business. We've all heard that phrase. Whereas the equity stuff is the more work on your business. So we characterize it as black activity, because this is the stuff that's usually wealth generating. So you can make a lot of money working in your business, but you tend to produce wealth by working on your business, is the idea of the color coding. What's important on the left-hand side is most people actually pit income versus equity activity. So they change the ampersand into a versus. And when that happens and pressure goes up, then what we have a tendency to do is default towards the income activities. So again, what we want from everybody that we work with is to run their business like a business person, not like a broker or a lawyer or whatever it is. And what business people do very well is they look at their business more holistically, and they think both short-term income and long-term on equity. So in the upper right, we just bifurcate those out. No right answers here, but just kind of go, look, if there's a value to your time when you're doing administrative activity, that value is X. When you're doing your green activity, it's a 10X. And when you do black activity, okay, and make no mistake, not every black activity pays off, okay, when you're doing longer term planning for your business or making an investment in a certificate that might advance your career or doing some marketing, you know, those types of activities, not everything hits, not every equity play actually works out, but we do put a value on it. If done properly, it should help your business grow 100X. And so that's kind of the big construct of just, you know, how red, green, black works. I mentioned earlier, many of our clients actually calendar in red, green, black, and it gives them a way to just very quickly look at the dashboard, say in Outlook or Google Calendar, whatever it is, and it gives them an idea of where their time is going. So going back to what you're saying, it makes them more conscious of their time investment. At the bottom, Karen, and then I'll be quiet here for a minute, but at the bottom, okay, the first row there is actually, believe it or not, has been our experience of most of the people when we meet them, when they start really taking, you know, stock of where their time's going. It actually looks 40% red, 55% green, and less than 5% black. And a lot of people kind of go, oh, there's no way. But that has come up so often. And what that is it's more of a burnout allocation. It's somebody who's doing so much green activity, and then they're exhausting themselves trying to keep up with so much green activity that they start doing red activity, but they tell themselves that they're doing longer term thinking. And all of a sudden what's happening for them personally is they're burning out. So what we want to do is create that awareness, have people take an allocation, and then, you know, at the bottom there, we kind of bifurcate between kind of, you know, a certain period of time, say you're running your business, things are kind of, you know, normal, if you will. We want you heavy in the green, and we want you working to minimize the red as best you can, or at least doing it, you know, closer to off hours, you know, those types of things. And then pushing the black up to about 15%, which is, you know, 5 or 6 hours a week based on a 40-hour week, which none of us work, but just try to make it a real number there. So somewhere around 5 to 6 hours a week is what we push on our clients to get injected into their calendar on a regular basis. And then typically for most businesses, there's a slower time. Could be, you know, around the holidays towards the end of the year. For some businesses, it's the first 2 months of the year. Some businesses, it's summertime. Different parts of the world have different kind of slow periods. And that's where we actually invite people to really start cranking up the black time to about 35%, minimizing the green a little bit, never taking your foot off the gas, but making some longer term investments that way. So hope that wasn't too much, but just wanted to give the folks kind of a feel for how we interpret these things.
Right. Okay. No, I think it's really useful for people to understand the difference between those categories of time. I think it dovetails really nice with another episode of our Essentials where we were talking to people about, you know, lift your head up and make sure you're thinking offensively and defensively. And this, I think, really helps me understand how to think more offensively about what I'm doing, because otherwise it ends up being nothing more than a cliche or a buzzword. So, you know,
that's right.
Some of the advice I was hearing in there, like the mindfulness of the time, like what is the starting point usually, Travis? The scheduling, is that what we're saying?
Actually, usually it's a little bit to, you know, go back over the last month and not trying to create an administrative activity, but just kind of loosely try to piece together where did your time go. Got to get that baseline of, you know, what do we think our allocations are running, and then start to, you know, nothing on here is advice as much as just giving people something to counterpunch off of. But then, you know, depending on where you are in your business, start making some choices and some targets about how much time you'd like to spend where. And then we start, monitoring. And usually how it goes for most people is they set a target on black. They might even calendar some time for black activities, but then they sit down and they get really anxious. And so typically one of the first equity related black activities that we put people through is to sit there for an hour and a half or whatever it is and just figure out what your long-term activities are going to be. And start to prioritize those, rank them a little bit, start to think that through so that when you do actually sit down and do black activities, you're kind of pulling off the shelf and going, okay, this is the next one for me to start focusing on. Because otherwise the temptation to go right back into income, draws us all in that way, if you will.
Okay.
So usually it's a little bit of looking at the past, kind of getting that baseline, setting a target, and then a couple of things. We do have recommendations around black equity time, just really quickly. Number one, you schedule them first, because as you can see in the upper right there, if you wait until you have the time, you'll never get to it. So you got to put it in your calendar first, build the rest of your week around it. Exceptions come up, absolutely. But if you put it in there, you'll be more purposeful to hold it. I actually do mine on Thursdays, typically in the afternoon, because Fridays are starting to get too close to the weekend, earlier in the week, too much green activity going on. So that's been kind of, I also do a lot of my work on planes when I'm, when we're in the normal world, traveling around. So you schedule it first. You schedule it either beginning or end of day, because it's typically hard for people to toggle in the middle of the day between income and equity activities. Also, a lot of times that's when the fire drills happen, so it's just harder to control. And then also, and this is kind of important, you actually want to put your body in a different spot from where you're doing your income related activities, because your habits and your habitat are tied together. And the more you try to do equity related activities, wherever, like when people start looking at their workstations, they're going to start noticing that everything is built for green and red. Nothing is actually built for long-term thinking. So if you leave your body there, you'll get an email, or you'll get a phone call, or whatever it is, and you'll get kind of sucked right back into the green, if you will.
Nice. This is really helpful, Travis. So, you talked about how easy it would be to burn ourselves out, staying in our income focus and not looking at those other things. And I think, burnout right now, with the level of adrenaline that's coursing through us and the concerns and the worries we have, super relevant to be able to actually come up with a strategy for being able to manage that. So
yeah. And one other thing on that, Karen, that has come up with a lot of clients, and it won't be true for everyone, but for a lot of my clients, our clients, one of the things that we're talking a lot about is there just isn't as much to do in a green environment right now. Things are kind of frozen. Everybody's kind of, in a wait and see mode, those kinds of things. So we're actually, really encouraging people to just, really set those allocations, because sometimes you can do a lot of short run related activity, but if nobody's kind of doing anything, it's going to feel momentarily satisfying, but it's not really moving the needle. So we've been working with a lot of people to kind of make a pretty good adjustment to the equity related activity and get it up through this time. Maybe working on their database, maybe working on some playbooks, maybe working on some longer term strategic development, the offensive play that, you and Tony talked about. Just things like that. It might not give you that momentary, experience of I'm getting something done, but as you come out of this, strange time that we're in, kind of in a running start, not kind of what we call a dead water start. A dead water start is where everybody's kind of sitting in the water and then they start the race. And then you got to start getting momentum, whereas some races are started where you run into the water, so you feel like you already have momentum. And it feels like we can get people into a running start as opposed to a dead water start that way.
Okay, cool. So super relevant for everyone, particularly relevant for increasing the awareness if I'm working in a green environment and trying to understand maybe why I'm feeling exhausted and like I'm not getting anywhere. Yeah?
Correct.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, Travis. This is really helpful. I appreciate your time, and it's always good to see you.
Yeah. Thank you, Karen. Thanks, everybody.